Earlier this year, in September 2024, the Royal Pharmaceutical Society, or the RPS, put forward a set of proposals to become the Royal College of Pharmacy. Since then, the RPS has been on tour around England, Scotland and Wales to put forward their case and hear what members have to say about the idea.
One thing it will mean to me personally, really to be recognized as someone who is contributing and has the opportunity to inspire future generations.
Why are we doing this now? What are they trying to achieve that requires the upheaval, the change to take you to a Royal College of Pharmacy or whatever you want to call it?
I'm just kind of here to observe and because I feel like I'm going to get into the industry at some point, so I'm just going to observe and see what's kind of left off for me to then go off of and where improvements need to be made.
I'm Karen Burns, RPS correspondent for the Pharmaceutical Journal, and I went with executive editor Carolyn Wickware to attend a couple of these roadshows, talking to members and hearing what the RPS has to say about its decision to pursue these proposals.
That's right. We went to two of the roadshows. First, we went to one in London in early October, and then we also went to the final roadshow in Nottingham in the middle of November. So before we get into all that, I think we should remind listeners what the proposals actually spell out.
Basically, the RPS is proposing that it becomes a registered charity and a Royal College of Pharmacy. Being a charity means creating a board of trustees which would have general control and management of the administration of the charity. Assembly, which would be retained for professional leadership, would be renamed Senate, and the national boards would be named National Councils. Also, the pharmaceutical press, which is the RPS's knowledge business, would become a wholly owned subsidiary, so a separate company that generates revenue for the charity.
But this is all subject to a member vote, and we're expecting that to happen before the end of March next year. The vote is only open to full members of the RPS, so not associate members, and it will need 2/3 of the members who choose to vote to say yes for the proposals to go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a really in-depth interview with Paul Bennett, who's the chief exec of the RPS, on the PJ website, and that goes into all the detail behind the decision. And of course, there's also the RPS's own FAQ page on its website, and we'll include links to both of those in our show notes.
Yes, there's lots of info available if listeners are interested. And that was sort of the point of these RPS roadshows, to share as much information with members as possible.
Yeah, exactly. And as well as hearing the RPS put their case forward, we wanted to listen to the attendees' questions and speak to some of them ourselves about their thoughts on the proposals.
Yeah, I'm not from the UK, right? I came here from Germany. So I've not been in lots of events from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. So I just wanted to learn more about what the society does and what's going on. And then I saw the news about the move to a Royal College, which I don't really understand. So I thought I would learn a bit more about that today, and maybe about future events I might be interested in.
Are there any particular questions you have about the potential move to a Royal College?
But really just what it means,
What
right?
it means.
And that is, I guess in Germany we have a very different system, so I'm not very familiar with how societies and colleges work, so really get a basic understanding of what that means would be interesting for me.
Well, Alex definitely came to the right place because there were lots of RPS people explaining in detail what they were proposing. Now, they said that to move things forward, they need to seek what they called charter change.
When we set out on this journey, and it's been an 18-month journey, we appointed an independent organisation to help us review the governance. We've had 2 governance reviews in the last 10 years. They were undertaken internally. They proposed some changes that were enacted, but a whole other raft of changes which couldn't be enacted without significant charter change. So we wanted a really fresh approach, an independent look at what we were doing.
That independent look came from an advisory body called Firetail, as Paul Bennett told us when we spoke to him last September. The RPS looked at what the organisational structure, the constitution, might look like in future, and how they might organise their governance around that.
We've been living now for 14 years with the current constraints of a fairly rigid governance structure, and obviously that dates back to the changes that took place when the RPSGB lost its regulatory responsibilities and became, as it is today, the professional leadership body. And we've been living with those constraints despite several attempts to amend the governance, at least 2 occasions in my time here as Chief Exec, and I think one previous occasion to that. The opportunity to amend has always been fairly limited, and the conclusion that's always been reached by the working groups that have been involved in the governance reviews and ultimately the Assembly in considering the governance reviews has been that there is a need for charter amendment. So the charter is the document that gives the organisation its legal identity and sets out really what we're here to do. What we're striving for in the future is a charter that better articulates who we are for pharmacy and for patients. And it doesn't...
When I spoke to Paul, he said, and I'm quoting directly here, he said, "Whenever we look at the governance of the organisation in an endeavour to improve transparency, effectiveness, decision-making and agility, we are always confronted by the fact that we have a very prescriptive charter." Now that's what Paul said to me last September, and I think he's making that same point here at the roadshow.
And we heard that changing the charter is quite an ancient process. The change has to be approved by the Privy Council, which is a somewhat mysterious advisory body for the king set up during the 13th century. So that's one of the big points of action if the vote goes through, having them approve the charter change. The other is putting the proposal to the Charities Commission, who have to approve of the Royal College of Pharmacy becoming a registered charity.
Yeah, and there would be a few changes that would come with being a registered charity, including having a board of trustees. Karen Baxter, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of the RPS and Managing Director of Pharmaceutical Press, explained to the attendees a few of those changes.
So the trustee board is financial and legal. The Assembly is the professional heart of the organisation. They're responsible for ensuring that our strategy is right for the profession and also for thinking about policy from a GB perspective. And we retain the country boards, the national boards, because they're looking at policy and the way the organisation operates from that devolved healthcare perspective, which we continue to need.
There are several changes to the Assembly proposed. Firstly, that it would be called the Senate. But one of the RPS's significant additions to the Assembly, or Senate, is the inclusion of a student member to feed into strategy decisions. Karen went on to talk about the vote and the next steps with the Privy Council and Charities Commission.
So we have to go out to a vote for the membership, and of those members that choose to vote, 2/3 must be in favour of the proposal for us to be able to proceed. If all of that is agreed, we will seek to book a register as a charity. So we'll be reaching out to the Charity Commission and OSCA, which is the equivalent in Scotland, to register ourselves as a charity with those bodies. And those changes will flow through and create changes to our regulations. Our regulations aren't subject to the vote in the same way that the Charter is, but we have to gazette them, which basically means make them publicly available for a period of 60 days in order for the changes to be approved.
So if the membership votes in favour, the RPS would then be known as the Royal College of Pharmacy. But as we heard, it's more than just branding. Here's Liz North, who's the RPS's Associate Director for Communications and Marketing, speaking at the Nottingham Roadshow.
We've talked about the fact that it's a name change for Assembly to be called Senate, but when it comes to the Royal College of Pharmacy, it is absolutely not about a name change. It's about a stronger, louder voice for pharmacy, and it's so that we can achieve the shift and the change that we need to in the environment. We work in a really complicated environment across GB, across health and policy, and across pharmacy itself, which is, having worked at a number of different Royal Colleges and before that charities, it is quite the most fragmented and complex set of systems and structures and organisations. And what we want to be able to do is be that single point of professional leadership that does what it says on the tin. And we believe that as a Royal College, and a Royal College that is a professional leadership body that's increasingly focusing on education and credentialing, as well as the rest of our portfolio of work, that will move us towards that goal. So we are committed as an organisation to be having a conversation with our members and potential members about our changes, about the plans that we have, and about where we're going.
And it was a conversation, wasn't it? At both roadshows, people had a lot of questions following the presentations.
Yeah, and luckily we had our microphones with us to capture some of that. In Nottingham, I remember there was a question about the timescales around all of this, and here's how Karen Baxter responded at the time.
There's a bunch of formal and informal. So we'll initially get informal approval of the Privy Council office. We'll then almost stop the process, because what we need to then do is set up the wholly owned subsidiary, and it's easier to do that before we acquire charitable status. So after that, we will then put things formally forward to Privy Council, the Charity Commission and Oscar. They don't have a timeline. So I think the thing I've been concerned about, our governance is opaque. The Privy Council is extremely opaque. So we don't know when they will sit and meet to have that.
So does it be years?
We don't think so. We think it will be within a matter of months, and they are encouraging us to put our application forward. We then have to do the same with the Charity Commission. Again, no timeline, but we know it can take up to 6 months. So we've sketched out a timeline that we think is reasonable with those uncertainties in it that will bring us around to the first quarter of 2026. That's the right. I keep saying.
There were many more questions, far too many to include in this episode, but the RPS has taken notes and will produce a report in December.
After the Q&A, we interrupted some people's dinner to ask what they thought about the proposals, based on what they'd heard so far. Here's Jonathan, Director of European Public Affairs at Alliance Healthcare.
Because there's still a few things that I think are missing here, like what is the big picture vision for pharmacy? What is it that we're going to achieve by 2030 that makes this, necessary? And the Pharmaceutical Society, in its very many guises, has always been quite influential. It's not needed to be a Royal College to get to there. It used to help that we used to be across the river from Parliament, and that it used to help that everyone was a member whether they liked it or not. So you were speaking as the voice of pharmacy. And pharmacy's problem is that there are a lot of voices, too many voices. 'Twas ever thus. So I'm looking to that. On the other hand, you can see it from the outside. That's quite right. A Royal College of Pharmacy probably makes more sense to an NHS audience, a lay audience, a professional audience, that kind of thing.
So it wasn't just blanket enthusiasm for the proposals, but I think it's fair to say that on average most people were in favour. Here's haematology pharmacist Bhagyashree.
I came today because I wanted to find out more about what is going to happen to the future of the professional body that we have at the moment. I've always been a very big advocate to turn into a Royal College, and seeing the work that has been put in over the last 18 months has been really reassuring on how much thought has gone into it and where we are going with this in terms of aspiring more pharmacists to join as well, but also to reinforce the educational element and how we basically, as a charity, as a registered charity, will be able to change the landscape of pharmacy in the future. I have always thought we should be a Royal College, and it's taken us a long time to get there. It just gives you more credibility. It means that we are a registered charity. We will be able to do different things with the financial side of things, reinvest that back into education and training, and actually have a more structured approach to how we develop our education and training. Yeah, thank you.
And Carmen, a fourth-year student, liked what he'd heard as well.
I think based on the presentation that was given to us by Paul and the rest of the people, I think the changes are promising to what the RPS can do. A lot of more things that it can do that it's not currently doing. Mainly, I would say, I personally liked the sort of focusing on what does the RPS actually do, because I think there's a lot of confusion on what it actually does. And I did kind of like that I focused on that more and just shape it to better help students, pharmacists, pharmaceutical science as well. So I like those changes. Look forward for them to happen if the vote goes through.
And here's Matthew Boyd, Professor of Medicine Safety at Nottingham School of Pharmacy. Matthew sounded almost impatient for the RPS to get on with this.
It's important for me because I've been a member for, I think the bit of paper I get says 24 years now, that I get every year. And I think as many as have expressed, there is an important point to having a professional leadership body, because actually how do we represent ourselves? How do we have that voice if we don't have that? And when we decoupled in 2010, that role left the RPSGB, and the GPHC weren't taking it on, so the RPS had to be formed. And it's really interesting, over the last few years, we are now at a generational change in our profession. And if we don't have this voice, then we're going to get lost in the melee of the healthcare disciplines. And that's already starting to be evident with ACPs, independent prescribing, the boundaries of what is a pharmacist and what is a pharmacy professional is changing. And so we don't get professional creep, we've got to make sure that actually our identity is retained and that we have those specialisms.
And you believe that this proposed change would help towards all this?
Well, we've been talking about a Royal College for a long time, and lots of the proposals are very much around actually how do we get that recognition. And I understand the challenges about, well, we're not a Royal College and we've got to put all of those caveats to the discussion. I think when we became the RPS in 2010, it came around very quickly. We had Transcom. The focus was all about how do we regulate pharmacy at an agenda that the then DHSC wanted to get out. I don't think the RPS had the chance at the time to really formulate its plans in the way that it truly wanted to. It's had now 14 years to be able to think about what do we need in a time of big change, because we've had the education training standards changed twice in that time, along with other elements. Now's a good time to be able to do this, particularly as I think...
And Shadi, a fourth-year student, also mentioned that it would help with recognition.
It would be great because I believe we are very underrepresented in among other healthcare professionals such as nurses and medics. We do the most job. We get I work in a community pharmacy. The amount of abuse sometimes you receive is so bad, and I think we in a public we're not as recognized as we should be, and we are a sleeping giant. I agree with Liz.
By the way, that reference to a sleeping giant is something that Liz North said earlier.
I think what I would say is that pharmacy is a sleeping giant. It's an amazing profession, and I've worked with medics, I've worked with podiatrists, and the physicists, but that's another story.
We also spoke to Matt and Ankush, two members of the English Pharmacy Board at the Nottingham event, who again sounded very enthusiastic about the change.
So I think it's really that campaign for change and actually seeing the profession drive forwards. So the really important thing for me is that this is setting the foundations of everything for pharmacy. So I think what we're looking for with the Royal College of Pharmacy is actually we want everybody on board and want everybody to get invested into this journey, because if we can do that, it strengthens everything for our members and then ultimately for our patients. I think the important thing for me is to engage, listen, contribute and vote, because I think it's a really important opportunity, and so if we don't get that engagement from all of our members, we haven't got it. We haven't got that mandate, and that's what we want. We want the vote to pass, and we want the vote to pass really well.
Don't be indifferent, and I think the people that are engaged, I think we've all got a responsibility to engage our profession, and if we know other people that are members, to speak to them about what's happening here, because a lot of people are members but don't engage with RPS content, and that's partially the way that we engage with them and vice versa. So I think actually the voice and the noise around this is going to come from people that do attend and keep spreading that voice and sharing it on different platforms.
Okay, so I reckon we got a good sense of the mood and what questions people had. Corinne, what was your take overall?
The events were well attended. I suppose that's the first thing to say. And it was pretty clear from the questions that people asked and what people told us that this is an important decision for members, whatever side they're on. I get the feeling that most people are keen on the idea of belonging to a Royal College.
I would agree with that, and we'll know by March or April next year what the outcome of the member vote will be. But it could be some time after that before we hear from the Privy Council and Charity Commission.
Yeah, I think I remember Karen saying in response to a question at Nottingham that the RPS had sketched out a timeline that would see the RPS officially become a Royal College in 2026, assuming this all went ahead. Although I don't know if that timescale is set in stone.
Okay, well, finally, let's hear from Claire Anderson. You sat down with Claire at the RPS London offices not long after the roadshows had finished to hear how she thought they'd gone.
We just want to support our members to be the best they can be, to be really excellent, and to be able to do that and to provide credentialing and education for them and take them to the next level, really. And I think being a Royal College will help us to do that.
How do you feel now that you've been through all this? What's your take on how the roadshows went?
They went really well. I think people were really interested. People are excited about the change, very supportive. Didn't hear hardly any negative. Most people think it's the right move, which is really good. People have questions, of course, about process, about what we're going to do, about what it means for employers, things like that. But I think we can answer a lot of those. We're going to feed back now in December from the roadshows. We've collected all the questions and all the answers to those. We're writing a report. And then after Christmas, we'll start really the marketing phase. So we'll be marketing the Royal College to our members at that point before the vote, which will be in the first quarter of next year.
Thank you. And finally, would you have any message for people listening to this, whether members or otherwise?
Please engage and please vote yes.
In the meantime, if anybody wants to know more, there's our interview with Paul Bennett in the PJ, and the RPS have also published a set of FAQs on their site. And members can also email the RPS team on feedback@rfarms.com.
Let's see what happens. This time next year, we could be looking at a Royal College of Pharmacy. But for now, it is still the RPS, which reminds me, if you're interested in joining the RPS, to access a range of member benefits, including the Pharmaceutical Journal's news, features, and learning resources, you can do so for the equivalent of just 60p a day. Just search RPS membership to find out more.
Yes, and thank you for joining us on our recap of the RPS Roadshow events. This episode of the PJ Pod is part of our November issue. The PJ Pod is brought to you by the Pharmaceutical Journal, the official journal of the Royal Pharmaceutical Society.
Thanks for listening. Bye for now.
Bye.